Heschmeyer, who also went on the big Catholic Answers pilgrimage, Rhine pilgrimage. We went to the place where Christendom started. Really, I mean, as I said yesterday, it's not Rome, it's not Jerusalem. Christendom, as we understand it, started among the Franks when they put this whole thing together, and we stood where Charlemagne stood, and where Hildegard stood, and where so many other great saints and heroes of the era of Christendom stood, and we had a wonderful time. Today's show asked me anything about Catholicism. I'm going to wake Joe up in a minute. I know he's still suffering from jet lag, but when I wake him up, you can ask him anything you want about Catholicism. 888-318-7884. Joe.
It's good to be here. Where am I?
That's what he said every day in Europe. It's good to be here. Where am I?
It's great to be here. I'm glad that we're doing this show today because I was asleep by a little after 7 on Monday night and didn't make it much longer on Tuesday night. So I think today I can stay to the end of the show, which ends 7 o'clock my time.
I'm really glad to hear it, Joe. I'm really glad you feel you can make it through a 2-hour show. 888-318-7884 if you've got questions for Joe. We'll talk a little bit more as we go about the pilgrimage. I think there might be things you want to talk about, Joe. There might be things that I want to, I'm not going to say embarrass you with, but share about.
We have a mutually assured destruction approach here.
I know that's true because you have some about me too. All right. The trip was perfect. Joe and I were not perfect. All right. So maybe there are a few little embarrassing details, but it's good to be back. It's always good to be back. But I have to say, I guess we'll get into all of it, but I particularly liked visiting military families over in Germany. That was a great part of the trip. Let me ask you this question. Do you mind if I start you off with a question, Joe? Are you awake enough for that?
Please do.
All right. So I've actually been seeing a lot about this on the internet lately, and this is coming up in debates I'm seeing with Protestant pastors and whatnot. And the claim that, look, the early church taught that Mary sinned. And so this is a way of saying, look, you Catholics, this idea of Mary as preserved from sin is really a late invention. It's not of apostolic origin.
No, it's not true. And it's not true for a couple of reasons. One, because when you say the early church taught that Mary had sin, this sounds as if you're saying there was some kind of church-wide consensus on this score, and that's simply not true. What would be more accurate to say is that early Christians were in the process of getting a more precisely formulated doctrine of things like original sin and Mary's place within that. And we see this in their own writings. So you see, like in the 100s, for example, people like St. Justin Martyr and St. Irenaeus of Lyon comparing Mary to Eve and talking about her as the new Eve who unties the knot of Eve's disobedience through her obedience. And we see her being described as the all-pure ark, and we see all of these kind of poetic descriptions of her. And it's true in the midst of this, there are some church fathers who think that Mary sinned or had original sin, or maybe she sinned one time. But there is this broader trajectory of emphasizing Mary's purity, both external and internal. And so when we have a more precise kind of formulation of the doctrine of original sin, beginning in the 300s with people like St. Augustine, he's very careful to point out that the things he's saying about original sin don't apply to Mary, that he's not arguing that Mary sinned. In his work on nature and grace, depending on the version that you're using, they're numbered slightly differently. Some have this as chapter 36, some have it as chapter 42. But he says, after defending the idea of original sin against the Pelagians, he says, we must accept the Holy Virgin Mary, concerning whom I wish to raise no question when it touches the subject of sins out of honor to the Lord. For from him we know what abundance of grace for overcoming sin in every particular was conferred upon her who had the merit to conceive and bear him, who undoubtedly had no sin. Well then, if with this exception of the Virgin, and then he goes on. So he's making this broader point about how we all struggle with original sin and that it's actually much worse than some people realize. But in the midst of that, he's very careful to point out, we're not talking about Mary, though. So this shows that this wasn't some late thing, that as far back as we find really clear formulations of original sin, we find coupled with that a recognition that Mary is a different case, and that she's a different case precisely because of the incredible honor that our Lord pays her, beyond the honor of making her his mother, that he blesses her in this unique sort of way, and that the early Christians were right in recognizing this kind of singular honor. So the sinlessness eventually is dogmatically affirmed by the church, but there is a very clear sense quite early on that Mary is special in some way, and that this specialness about Mary makes it so you can't simply assume she dealt with sin in the same way that we do, both original and actual sin.
Joe Heschmeyer, our guest, our number 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. So is it, just to follow up a little bit on that, is it a disingenuous way of arguing, or just a misunderstanding maybe of how Catholics view the age of the church fathers? If, say, in some of these online debates, the Protestant minister might say, here's a church father that believed Mary sinned, here's another early church person, and so it might come up with a list of 3 or 4 or 5 and says, see, the early church didn't believe Mary was free of sin.
So it's certainly a misunderstanding of how we use the church fathers, because we don't just take individual lines. And I think it does risk at least being disingenuous. It risks being disingenuous for this reason. Let's take the example of modern politics. You could cobble together various sentences from politicians in Party A that sound more like Party B. So like the example that comes to mind offhand, Bernie Sanders is or was a relatively big gun rights supporter because he's from a rural state where gun rights make a lot of sense, and this is quite a break from his normal party. So you could quote him on guns over here, and you could quote, a pro-life Democrat on abortion over there, and you could cobble together some quotations and say, look, the platform of the Democratic Party is the Republican Party platform. But no one who's actually aware of politics would think that was an accurate, honest, good faith read of either party. They would just say, sure, you can find outliers. So you can do that to the church fathers. You can find everything an individual church father gets wrong and cobble those things together. You can find all of the areas that they are outliers and pretend that this is a representative view in the church. One of the most egregious areas this happens is on the canon, which books belong in the Bible, where people will quote Jerome and say, well, look, Jerome says this. But Jerome's views on the Bible were challenged in his day by other church fathers like Augustine. And so it's not simply the case that you can just take a line out of context. There's a broader narrative of what's happening here. So we have to recognize, number one, what did the church broadly believe? Not just what did an individual theologian or bishop believe. And number two, what do we see over time that the Holy Spirit is doing and guiding the church? Because we don't think that every individual sentence from every church father is automatically infallible. It can be helpful evidence in establishing what the church broadly believed, but it would be a mistake to treat stray lines from patristic texts the way you might treat lines from Scripture or the words of Jesus or something like this. That's not an accurate or faithful way of interpreting the church fathers. That's not how the Catholic Church treats the church fathers, and it's not how anyone should treat the church fathers.
Joe Heschmeyer, our guest. We're going to see if he can stay awake for all 2 hours. We'll be right back with more. You can ask him whatever you want about the Catholic faith. 888-318-7884.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Support for Catholic Answers Live comes from Catholic Chemistry, a dating app for Catholics. Founded by a longtime member of the Catholic Answers team, CatholicChemistry.com.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Are you ready to spread your wings? Wings is the weekly newsletter that's packed with exclusive news, program information, features, and updates of all that's going on at the Global Catholic Network. To sign up, go to EWTN.com, click subscribe, enter your name and email address, and you'll start getting your wings every week. Get your wings today. It's the weekly newsletter from EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Joe Heschmeyer is our guest. You can ask him anything about the Catholic faith. If you've got a question about the Catholic faith, you are welcome here, whether you are Catholic or not, whether you're a believer of any kind or not. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Joe, I'll just ask you this before we go to the phones. Did you have a favorite church or saint that we visited on our Europe pilgrimage?
I loved the Strasbourg Cathedral.
Oh, me too.
And
yeah.
I really loved Strasbourg in general. And then I found out a couple days later that my family, one wing of the family, comes from that area, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's just gorgeous. I loved the Cologne Cathedral. I knew Cologne Cathedral was going to be, it's pretty famous. But if I'm being honest, I actually thought the Strasbourg Cathedral was better.
Yeah, the Strasbourg Cathedral is... it's very satisfying aesthetically. It's just it's huge. It was the tallest building in the world for a couple hundred years, but it doesn't feel disproportionate in any way. Everything seems in exact proportion on that building.
Yeah. The Cologne Cathedral was also the tallest building in the world, wasn't it?
At some point,
a short period of time in the late 1800s?
They didn't finish it until the 1800s. They didn't get that spire finished.
Right.
Like they had bills that piled up. They got things they had to get the kids to soccer practice. They just never got to it.
I understand completely. I've got a cathedral worth of work. I am going to get around in about 600 years.
I love the cathedrals too. I'd be like, when was this built? Well, between 900 and 1450. You're like,
oh, I mean, in
okay.
all seriousness,
all right,
the
great.
Cologne Cathedral starts in the 1200s and ends in the 1800s.
No, you know what though? It shows stick-to-itiveness. That's what I like. That shows
That's
real
true.
stick-to-itiveness. I think we don't have that anymore. They just stuck to it. They said we've put the foundation down. We're going to keep going with this.
You know what? Maybe we should have a little picture of the Cologne Cathedral we put up in the publishing department, because there's some authors who I think it's a similar journey.
What the?
Todd's got an idea that he started with them, and then 600 years later, he's still trying to get them across the finish line.
To finish the book. Yeah,
I'm not going to name any names, but I'm sure we could.
I think I know who you're talking about. 888-318-7884. I got to say, I really loved Aachen. I didn't know what a feeling I would have standing right where Charlemagne stood. This at the very beginning of what we came to know as Christendom. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. So I was impressed by not only that, but it was in Cologne, actually. So we toured the Cologne Cathedral and then kind of broke away from the main group, and I ducked into a random church.
Was that really random? I think I know what you're going to say, but you just ducked into a random church?
Yeah, no, it was just a completely random. Saw a church, went in. The church itself was not very attractive. It was okay. Started to leave, but then noticed a timeline of the life of Blessed Duns Scotus on the wall.
Oh, Duns
and
Scotus.
I thought,
yeah,
this has to be the church where Duns Scotus is buried.
There he is.
Who else is this much of a Scotesian? And so I pulled up my phone and checked real quick, and sure enough. And then I did a little bit of exploring in the church and was able to find there was the
found
tomb
Duns
of Duns
Scotus.
Scotus.
See, I thought you were going to say Albert the Great,
because
Albert the Great is buried.
No, I
there.
missed Albert the Great. You had Albert the Great.
Yeah.
I had Duns Scotus. So.
All right, let's go to Steubenville. Oh, it's the Cologne of the Americas. It's the Strasbourg and Aachen of the American Church. Nicholas in Steubenville, Ohio, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Glad to have you here with us, Nicholas. Go ahead with your question.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. My wife and I are in our 20s and we're saving for retirement as you do and investing for other reasons as well. I'm facing an ethical challenge. For the last 2 years, I've been saving in some non-morally filtered funds as well as some morally filtered with Catholic branding in the Middle East. And it's my understanding, though, that for proportionate reason, you can tolerate the evils of, I guess, the unfiltered funds, the good being the future of your family life or whatever. But it's come to my attention that there are some, I guess, funds that are, I guess, better than the ones I had historically known of. I won't name names, but, they're track market indexes and stuff, and they at least remove some of the more harsh evils, I guess. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm morally, if I'm okay to just continue on as I was. But I guess to boil it down is, are Catholics morally required to utilize the morally filtered funds given their existence, even if for various reasons they prefer secular ones such as convenience or performance? So that's kind of
it's not a requirement. It doesn't become sinful to use the non-morally filtered one. So you can't intentionally invest in something that's morally evil, but you can have a situation where you invest in one company, they invest in another company, and they invest in something that is immoral. And it's actually very difficult if you do virtually anything in the marketplace to avoid that. I mean, you go on Amazon, and Amazon gets some portion of that profit, and they're going to use it for whatever nefarious purpose they're going to use it for. And that's largely unavoidable. This is what is called, in technical terms, remote material cooperation. They're getting some financial support for the evil that they're trying to do, but you're not giving that to them on purpose for that reason, and your cooperation is sufficiently remote that it is not going to be the make or break for them doing the evil. No one's going to look at that and think that this means that you support the evil and so on. In those cases, if you have a good reason, you can still cooperate with the remote material evil. And in fact, this happens. I think it's probably fair to say that remote material cooperation with evils happens daily. You participate in an economy where many of the major players do things that are morally objectionable, and it's very hard to avoid all of that. So occasionally, a conscientious Catholic will propose an alternative that, hey, here's a coffee shop that isn't abominable and supporting terrible things, or here's, another way of buying these goods, or in the case that you're describing, here's a place you can give your money in terms of investing it in the market. Those things can be good, and I think that you should take them seriously as moral options. And it can be what's called a supererogatory good, a good that's over and above what's demanded, where there's a basic moral line beneath which you're sinning, but you might be called to go above and beyond the basic moral line. And I think this would be in that category, where it's not the case that everyone is required to do it, but it might be a good sacrifice. So in concrete terms, it might mean that you make less money. It might mean that it's more of a headache, but maybe this is one of the ways God is calling you to serve him, is to sacrifice some of those lost profits, sacrifice some of that convenience for this good. And if that's what he is calling you to, that's wonderful. But that isn't just automatically morally compulsory on everyone on pain of sin. This is something where, remote material cooperation is not of itself forbidden. It depends on the context. And there's sufficient reasons that people invest in, the stock market where they're not trying to support evils that a company might happen to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
No, that's a great answer. So that's very helpful. So I really appreciate that. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I think if you want to stay, someone, is that Darren?
That's
I don't know
Darren.
who D is. Someone in the
Darren,
okay, Darren.
Darren's a financial advisor. Is that the right term? Financial
totally
advisor?
forgot about that.
Yeah. So Darren, our producer, is also a financial advisor. So he'll talk to you if you stay on the line. He's got some ideas for you.
And it would be sinful to hang up now. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Nicholas, what I really liked, I got to say, about your call, my wife and I are in our 20s and we're planning our retirement. That sounds like something that you're married and you're thinking of family in your 20s. Good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. I mean, that either shows that you got a lot of foresight, or maybe you normally live in Spain.
You live
Retirement's just around the corner. So you got like 3 years of working left, so you got to get ready.
What are you talking about, Joe?
They have an early retirement age.
Oh, I didn't know. All right. Okay. I'm going to let you talk to a professional, an actual professional, our producer, Darren Delosier. Hang on, Nicholas. On we go. I'm sorry, I'm not going to get jokes today. I've had 2 weeks of Joe's jokes, and my brain is turned off. The worst thing that happened about this whole cruise, you know what I'm going to say, of this whole cruise is my wife now loves Joe Heschmeyer even more than she did before. So she's constantly doing a Joe Heschmeyer joke for me. I'm like, that's not.
Your wife had some of the best jokes of the trip.
I know, the two of you.
And they were just these random like sniper shots from the back of the room, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. You've ruined my life, Joe. Now I have to listen.
Oh,
to you.
the other thing, I know people are going to be very tired of hearing about the cruise, but I made a number of punny kind of jokes, and rolled his eyes and groaned, and yes, and then everyone on the cruise took that as a call to like, let's see if I can do a better pun, and Cy will really like that. So it was great because people were telling him these horrible jokes.
People thought that I was entertained by Joe's puns, so they came up to me and they go, "Hey, I got a good one for you." I was like, "No, this is a good one for Joe. Go talk to Joe. Don't do this with me."
So they were then telling me very triumphantly what they had done, and it was delightful.
Oh God, it was miserable. Andy in Long Beach, California, watching on YouTube. We're glad you're here, Andy. Go ahead with your question.
All right. Thank you for taking my call. Hey, Joe, I have a scriptural question.
All right.
In the Bread of Life discourse, John 6:35 specifically, when Jesus says, he who comes to me will never hunger, he who believes in me will never thirst. And I was wondering how we reconcile that with the literal interpretation of the bread and wine, and how we can understand that while still holding the literal interpretation.
Oh yeah, this is a very good question, and it's probably worth saying very clearly. Both Catholics and Protestants agree that when Jesus talks about the bread of life, he's giving a metaphor. He is not literally bread, and neither Catholics nor Protestants believe that he is. So when he says the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world, he is presenting himself as the new manna. And then he says, I'm the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. So if that was all he said, we would actually be fine with saying, yeah, like you can take that symbolically for sure. But then he actually explains what he means by the bread specifically. And it's not just his teaching, it's himself Eucharistically. So jump down to verse 51, because he's going to define. So both sides agree, bread of life is a metaphor for something. In verse 51, Jesus tells us what the bread of life is a metaphor for, and he's going to tell us it's for himself, and more specifically for his flesh. So he says, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever, and the bread which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh. So this is the bread that he gives for the life of the world. It's not literally bread, it's literally the Eucharist. It's literally his flesh. And that's what he says. So if you were to say that all of that means something else, it means his teaching. He could have said, the bread which I shall give for the life of the world is my teaching. But he doesn't. He says the bread which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh. So this is the bread. He is the bread. Well, how is he the bread? Because he gives us his flesh. And he does all of that work for us in John 6. He explains what he means by that. And so the Catholic view is not like he doesn't use metaphor, doesn't use spiritual imagery. He certainly does. But that he then explains what that spiritual imagery means, just as he does many of the other times he uses spiritual imagery. So let me give you an example. In John 2, he says, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll rebuild it. And John says the temple he referred to was his body. But now imagine somebody said, oh, well, when John says that, he actually meant his teachings. You would say, well, no, he doesn't. John just told you what he meant. He said the image of the temple stands for Jesus' body. Well, here, the image of the bread of life stands for Jesus' body. And we're told that explicitly by Jesus himself. So that's the Catholic view, that by all means, Jesus is the bread of life. And he who comes to Jesus will never hunger, and he who believes in Jesus will never thirst. But the way that Jesus gives himself to us is through his flesh. And if anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread which he shall give for the life of the world is his flesh. So that's how we would interpret it, because that's just exactly what he said.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, you bet.
Andy, I'll tell you what, if you'd like the book, The Eucharist is Really Jesus, one of Joe's many fine books, I'd be happy to send it to you. Just hang on and we'll send you a copy. Oh, it's so good to be back. It is so good to be back. I'll send you a copy, Andy. You just hang on and give us an address. The number here is 888-318-7884. I give out the numbers a little bit cautiously because the lines have been tending full, but give it a shot. Lines do open up continuously, so we'd love to get you in. If you've got a question about the Catholic faith, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're a believer of any kind or not, 888-318-7884. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Throughout history, some Catholics have been among the worst kind of villains, right? Or were they? In Cancelled, historian Steve Weidenkopf digs into the lives and controversies of some of these Catholics whose reputations have been blackened, often unfairly. He takes on the anti-Catholic versions of history and defends not only these figures, but the faith they represent. Order your copy of Cancelled today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. We've got a pretty good Joe Heschmeyer on the show today. Sometimes we have an excellent Joe Heschmeyer. Sometimes we have a superior Joe Heschmeyer. We've got a pretty good Joe Heschmeyer today, so you're welcome to call 888.
Are you actively discouraging people from calling?
No, pretty good Joe Heschmeyer.
Or I
It's
guess
really
you could
good.
be like,
this
is a great time to stump Joe.
No, I don't think pretty good Joe Heschmeyer is bad. That's better than most of us by a country mile, as they say. I don't actually know why they say country mile. What's different from a country mile than a regular mile? 888-318-7884 is the number. Joe is a shameless papist. Have you even done anything on Shameless Popery, or have you completely ignored your own very popular...
Oh, no. I have been doing things. I inadvertently stirred the pot more than I thought I would.
Why? What'd you do?
I mean, I was talking about the Jewish roots of the phrase Christ is King, and I knew you'd get some people who have feelings about Jewish people that are maybe more negative, and that me promoting this would make people upset.
Don't tell me.
But
the anti-Semites came out?
Yeah, there were definitely some. Which,
Really?
again, I knew I was going to get some of that. I was fully aware that was going to be the price of doing business. But just seeing that kind of stuff on display. Now, some of the people who complained were not. But you got people making like weird memes of me and stuff.
Really? What's the matter with people? What is the matter with people?
know.
There is a really strong anti-Jewish thing going around, man. That is not what God wants. Stop it, people.
Yeah.
I wish people would. Yeah, that's terrifying. I have a theory about the Jews. It goes like this.
Oh no.
No, this is my theory about the Jews. See if this pans out for you. Salvation is from the Jews.
Yeah, I dare say.
Do you agree with that theory?
I dare say that's a hard one to disagree with.
Yeah, because guess who said that? All right, let's. I tell you what, callers, you can guess who said that. Sean is in San Diego, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Hi, Sean. Got a question for Joe?
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to.
I've been having some conversations with friends and family about IVF, and they're all very good, earnest Catholics, but not maybe so much listening to Catholic Answers all the time or reading about church theology and stuff. And so I just need some help answering some questions. Mainly, it seems to come up in the conversations about how the church arrives at the conclusion that the only licit way to conceive is through natural means, and if God gave medical technology and science to help people with infertility conceive, why that's wrong, or if it is like a natural right to be conceived naturally, how the child is harmed by being deprived of that right if the process predated their conception. And then just as a bigger context, kind of more personal or simple answers or analogies might be helpful in these conversations and explaining these points, but that's kind of the dialogue that's been going on and things that come up in those conversations.
Great. That's a very well-formed question. And it's worthwhile here to approach the IVF topic from several different angles. The people you're talking to, are they pro-life?
Yes, very pro-life.
Okay.
But it doesn't feel like a abortion-related type of issue with them.
Yeah, IVF is one of the major drivers for abortion because of a couple things. You know, you have the fertilization of a lot of eggs, meaning you have the creation of a lot of children in a laboratory, and then you'll have one of a few things happen. Number one, you'll have the implantation of more eggs than the woman actually wants, where maybe she wants one kid and they'll implant 3 or 4 eggs just because many times it's not successful and the body will reject, and the child will die in their mother. And so then other times, the eggs will all take. So you might suddenly be pregnant with 4 babies. And then they'll do what is euphemistically called selective reduction, where they choose which of the babies should live and which ones should die. And they will kill the ones that they decide are the wrong sex or have the wrong genes or something like this. And it's, abhorrent from both a pro-life perspective and an anti-eugenics perspective, because this is straight up eugenics. Like what we're doing here of carefully choosing which children can come to birth and not based on their genetic factors is exactly the kind of eugenics that we rejected. The third possibility is that you fertilize all these eggs. You maybe only implant one, and that one takes. So now you have these fertilized eggs. You have these unborn children, and they're in a freezer somewhere. And maybe you'll want them later, or maybe not. But what often happens is that they slowly die in the freezer. And none of those are things we should be doing to children. Like none of those are appropriate ways to treat human beings. And this whole attitude of treating other human beings like they are products that we can create in a laboratory is itself immoral. That even if you didn't do that, even if you used 100% of the children you created in a lab and let them all come to birth and all of it was 100% successful, none of which is true. But even if it were, treating human beings as products you make in a lab is wrong. It's immoral. There's a reason that Frankenstein is a horror book, that just the act of doing that is wrong. And we recognize it's wrong on a very basic level, because this is not how individuals made in the image of God should be treated. And so, conceiving them in these ways that don't do justice to human dignity is already wrong. Whatever, the means of a bad conception, you might say, we can recognize, and we should recognize very explicitly, the goodness of the child. So a child born through IVF, a child born through adultery, a child born through fornication, a child born through anything, they're still beloved by God. They're still made in the image of God. They're still wonderful creatures that we should care for and love and everything else. And so if that's, people listening right now, if that's your own story, God bless you. None of this is meant to knock you in the slightest. We can say on the one hand, You are good, and also you deserve better. You deserve to be brought into the world on better terms, in the way humans are meant to enter the world, in a union of a loving husband and wife through the natural means, not in a laboratory, not in an affair, not in sexual assault, not any of those things. So we regularly can and do separate the rejection of the morality of the conception. We can say some encounters are immoral and still affirm the goodness of the child who results from that conception. So that's, I think, at the heart of this. You're misusing the nature of the human body. You're not helping the body do what it does. You're supplanting it. You're not helping, contraception is bad because it separates sex from babies, and this separates sex from babies in the opposite direction. And it's this breakdown where the most intimate act of the body should also be the act by which you bring new life into the world, that it should be in this loving embrace as a total gift of self, not this carefully calculated thing that you pay for through a lab service. Much, much more could be said about that. I don't know if that helps or not. And if you want, I have a YouTube video that I did on this that I can recommend as well.
Could I ask just a quick follow-up? Because
please.
The conversations have been very, like I said, very good faith and honest. I think the response to that would be, we've had these hypotheticals where we'll say, let's say that in the future the technology is so much we're just doing one egg, one sperm, one fertilized embryo, and it's going to take, we take all those variables out, it's going to a married couple that wants to raise the child in their house. I understand that the marital act is sacred and good, but what can I point them to show that only the marital act is good for conception and not scientific means or medical technology? What's the immorality that I can explain to them about those procedures within that hypothetical where we take out the horrors of the IVF industry?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. And that's where I was saying, it's wrong to bring people into conception through a lab. That, in the same way, we would be against surrogates and all of this. So in the hypothetical you're describing, is surrogacy part of it or no?
I would say no, it's being implanted into the wife of a married couple.
Oh, I see. Okay. Even in that case, you're not helping the couple to conceive in a marital way. So for example, there can sometimes be a medical issue with either a man or a woman where they're not able to just have children. They struggle with fertility. And there are ways of helping them to get over whatever those, physical barriers are, et cetera, where you help the body to perform as it's meant to perform. And in those cases, that is absolutely good. It's helping people to act in the way that they're meant to act, to live out their bodies and the meaning of their bodies and the meaning of their marriage and everything else in a way that brings new life into the world. IVF works around that. It doesn't address whatever the underlying issue is, and instead puts children in labs. And if you imagine children are just things that we can decide to create on demand, then that might make total sense. And in a modern kind of consumer world, a sort of have it your way sort of approach to life, then you can understand why this is very attractive to people. But if these unborn children are human beings with all the same rights and dignity as mom and dad and everything else, you can't treat another person that way. It's wrong to treat children as accessories. And it's possible to treat children as accessories even in a natural birth, and where you're just having a kid because it's that stage of life, and you treat them as sort of a prop, and they look good in the Instagram pictures, etc., and you don't really give justice to the child's humanity and dignity. And that's wrong too. This is more egregiously wrong for the same reason, that you're using a child that you had no right to do this to in this way that is contrary to their dignity. And so it is hard. People who no longer see why it might be wrong to make kids in labs, I think we have a moral sort of numbing that has been going on. When, I believe it was Time, maybe Newsweek, one of the two, first reported on test tube babies in the 1970s, people were shocked. They were horrified. And this was culture-wide, regardless of religion. And now the moral shock and outrage about that has completely gone away, but we're still doing the same thing people were justifiably shocked when they heard about. And I think it's probably telling that the first reaction that people had to hearing about this was to be appalled by it, without knowing any of the abortion implications or anything else. Just the idea of creating babies in test tubes, they realized at a very fundamental level that is not how you bring a child into the world. That there's something profoundly wrong about that. Now, a lot of the ways that gets explained is often in these kind of Aristotelian terms of the nature, the telos of the body. But I think there is just this argument from moral intuition that before we'd completely numbed ourselves to this, we recognized that this was something kind of shocking and horrific. Does that make sense?
And I totally agree. And it's very helpful to just hear it in different words in these types of conversations. They're like so emotional and personal, from good people that it's hard to talk about morality, but kind of appealing to just a general sense of what's right and wrong is maybe the simple way to do it. But yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd love to send you a book that we have, if you'd like it. It's called Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humani Vitae. It's a few years old, but it's got magnificent essays in it. And if you would like it, it's about the whole. It's about contraception, of course, but about the whole kind of Catholic response to the sexual revolution in a broader sense. And so this might be of great interest to you, Sean. If you'd like it, hang on the line. We'll send you Inseparable. It really is one of our best books, and I don't talk about it enough. Inseparable: 5 Perspectives on Sex, Life, and Love in Defense of Humani Vitae. Hang on. Give us that address. We'll send it, and we will take a quick break. Be right back with more Ask Me Anything with Joe Heschmeyer on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on, we'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more. Alexian Brothers is a proud sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. For 800 years, these Catholic brothers have offered a prophetic and daring response to the gospel, serving Christ in the sick, the poor, and the dying. Is God calling you to be a courageous disciple? If you feel called to total self-giving as a religious brother in the mission of Jesus, call our vocations office at 847-264-8703. That's 847-264-8703. AlexianBrothers.org.
Want the latest pro-life news? Want it delivered? Sign up. It's free. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your source for everything happening now in the fight to protect the sanctity of human life. New episodes delivered every week to your inbox. So if you really want to know,
sign up today.
Go to EWTN.com/pro-life today.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Joe Heschmeyer is our guest. There's a line open, so jump on that, 888-318-7884. I don't care what the question is either, because it's Ask Me Anything today. So, yeah, that line is for you, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I do want to just tell one little thing about our European pilgrimage, and then I might be done talking about it. But the people that went with us were an extraordinary witness to the Christian faith, and it really was something beautiful to see. It wasn't just a trip. It wasn't just a tour. It was people being on pilgrimage, and I know that it struck other people that way because quite a few of the crew we were on the Ama Siena. Ama is the river cruise company, the European river cruise company we were with, and I was very touched by the way they told us, Joe, on the last day there about how they had never seen a group like this before. They had never had a group like that on the boat, and it was quite beautiful. First of all, Ama does a beautiful job, and we really loved the crew. But I think that they felt loved, and I think that that's a beautiful witness to the pilgrims who came, not to us, to them.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. I mean, and seeing the kind of reaction the crew had, they're professionals. They're great at what they do and making people feel seen and welcomed and everything else. And so I think they came away feeling loved and appreciated, and it was really wonderful.
It really was.
I would add on that, it was also really wonderful right after that when we went to Stuttgart and we were on base and we talked to people who'd come from a couple hours away.
What was the name of the base, Joe? Patch Barracks.
Sorry.
Oh
yeah, it was Patch Barracks.
You would have got it eventually.
That's the name of the barrack. There's like 3 or 4 different barracks.
4 barracks there in Stuttgart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was really wonderful. People were, driving from a long way away because they don't normally get Catholic English-speaking apologists in Germany, and so it was a joy to get to do that with them. And I mean, I'd love to do something like that again. So yeah, it's been a wonderful time lately.
Yeah, that was very, very rewarding. The chaplaincy, Trinity, is it Blessed Trinity or Holy Trinity? The chapel there. On the base.
I don't remember.
I think it's Holy Trinity. Wait, I have the glass right behind me. They gave me a glass. Yeah, Holy Trinity.
Way to subtly drop that they gave you a glass.
I put it up there on the shelf. Do you like it, Edgar? Yeah, Edgar likes it. Did you notice that I put a glass up there? So Holy Trinity Parish, they invited the Germans to come in. And so there were a lot of folks from Germany who also came in. There were so many wonderful people, but just give you one example, Joe. Alban and his wife. Yes. And I remember Alban's name because he's from Albania. And immediately you meet someone named Alban from Albania, you go, Alban from Albania? And he's like, yes, everyone comments on it.
Be like naming a kid here, United Stat.
Yeah. United Stat from the United States.
You can't just take your country and cut off the last 2 letters.
But Alban is an actual person. So the Muslims raised in Islam in Albania came to Christianity via the internet and then discovered Catholic Answers and other, not just us, I'm going to try to take all the credit for it, but other Catholic, and then they realized that they were Catholic. And so they came into the Catholic Church, and then they came to see us on this military base. And I thought, you just can't get a more interesting story. And something is happening out there, Joe. I want people to feel encouraged by this, that there's, the message is getting through to people. The message of Jesus Christ and his church is getting through to people.
Yeah, it's true. And there's something really beautiful about that. And it's exciting to see it outside of the U.S. because I've seen the numbers and I've witnessed it personally here in America. And to see signs of life in places that in some ways are doing worse, to be very frank. Germany's got a lot of struggles right now. But we met a very good German priest.
A very good German priest.
We saw a lot of really great German Catholics. So yeah,
who wrote on the board? My neighbor's name is Canada. That was you, Darren? So yeah, some people.
I think our whole country could say that.
Our neighbor's name is Canada. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that reminds me of Jiminy Glick. I forget the Canadian movie star that he was interviewing. He goes, "You're from Canada."
Hey everyone, I'm sorry if you have questions. They're not getting answered today because Sai's going down memory lane.
You're from Canada, Jiminy Glick said. Do you need me to talk slower? Emma in Hayden, Idaho, watching on YouTube. Hi, welcome back, Emma.
Thank you. You are welcome back too. We missed you guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard they did a good job without us.
For the rest of our colleagues.
Did. You know what Edgar said is that your job is tough.
Edgar said that?
You do it so well, you make it look effort. Yes, he did.
Oh my gosh. I'm never going to let Edgar live that down.
Thank you for telling me that. Everything Sai does seems tough.
Yeah, somehow you make it look harder than it is. That's what people usually say to me. Somehow you take the easy and you really make it look hard.
Joe, I
Yes.
didn't make it to Moscow for your debate. My husband had to work and he likes to eat, so he couldn't take me down there. But I watched it. You smoked him. I was so impressed. Even my husband said he was impressed. My
Thank you.
proud of
I'm
you,
honored.
so. And
That's very kind of you.
Well, you're welcome. I was listening to your podcast about the sacrifice of the Mass, and it was really good. But when I talk to my Protestant friends, they say, well, we have a sacrifice of praise. So how do I rebuttal that? What do I say?
Well, I think we would just say, yeah, that's also true. In fact, we can also talk about making sacrifices in our own bodies. So Romans 12 says, I appeal to you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. That we can engage in acts of worship within our own bodies. And I'm not meaning to deny any of that. I think there's often a misunderstanding of prayer and worship among Christians, and particularly within Protestantism. But that doesn't mean that they're not doing any worship. A lot of what they call worship may not be, but other things that they may not think of as worship, like when they sacrifice, that is. So the issue is not that they don't offer worship at all. The issue is the highest form of worship is the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. And at the Mass, we participate in the sacrifice of the cross, that we become sharers in the altar, to use the language of St. Paul. So in 1 Corinthians 10, when Paul is talking about the Eucharist, he points to Israel and says, consider the practice of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices partners in the altar? So if you wanted to share in the Passover sacrifice, the way you did it was by eating the sacrifice. And so we want to share. We don't just want to offer our own sacrifices, our sacrifices of praise and the bodily sacrifices that we make. Those are all good. But the best sacrifice is the one that is beyond our capacity to make of ourselves. It's Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. And we become partners in that, according to St. Paul, by eating the sacrifice. Well, the sacrifice is Jesus' own body and blood. So we have to somehow eat Jesus' own body and blood to share in his sacrifice. And that is precisely what happens at the Mass. This is why we refer to it as the sacrifice of the Mass, that we present Jesus' sacrifice to the Father. We unite with Jesus' sacrifice all of our little acts of praise, of self-offering. This is why we have the offertory in Mass. This is a sacrificial gift that we give to take all of our little sacrifices and unite them with Jesus' big sacrifice and present those to the Father. And, you know, it's almost like if you, this is a trivial example, but if you've ever been in an office place where somebody gets a really good gift for a coworker, and then you just like sign on there and you're like, no, it's from all of us. You know, this is kind of how it works. Jesus does the hard work of dying on the cross, and we share by offering up our own prayers and sacrifices, and then by consuming him, by eating the sacrificial offering, his own body and blood. And so this is something bigger than a mere sacrifice of praise. So sacrifices of praise are great. Bodily sacrifices are all good, but this is the sacrifice par excellence that we're really called to as Christians.
Emma, you can hear the music, so that means we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Ask Me Anything with Joe Heschmeyer. The lines continue full, but usually at these breaks, they will open up a little bit, so give us a try. 888-318-7884. Joe Heschmeyer is the podcaster behind the Shameless Popery podcast. If you look for Shameless Popery online, you will find it. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. It's available on YouTube and all the sites, all the stuff. You can find Joe out there. More and more people are discovering. He can go into a bit more depth there on the topics that we discuss here, and lots of great topics there for you to find. Shameless Popery. Look for it wherever you get your content. Right back with more Joe. 888-318-7884. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Apparently, America has wanted him back. They had to loan him to Europe for a couple weeks while he was on pilgrimage with Catholic Answers Pilgrimage, but the line's just staying full for Joe Heschmeyer this hour. It's Ask Me Anything about Catholicism, and our guest is Joe Heschmeyer, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Thanks for coming back for another hour, Joe. Are you awake?
I think I am.
That was a long pause. I tell you what, between the question and the answer. That was a long. I think I am. All right. Have the questions seem hard to you, or have you been able? You feel pretty confident about your answers so far?
I mean, the IVF one is always a hard one from just an interpersonal perspective. Not because the answer is hard, but because you're dealing with this area of life that is very difficult for people to talk about.
Right.
And, people who are dealing with infertility and everything else, it's a real cross. It really is. And so telling them, hey, there is this way that you could just literally create a kid in a lab, and we don't deny that, and yet you still shouldn't do it.
Oh, yeah.
Is, like telling Frodo not to use the ring. Like, you have this thing, it's powerful, it'll work, and yet you still ought not do it because it's wrong to use it. Is hard for people to accept.
I love that you can just make a Frodo reference in our world today and people get it. Well, part of the reason I asked you if you had any hard questions was because Scott over on YouTube actually called with a question, but we weren't over. He's on the YouTubes with the folks, but then we didn't get him on. So I said, I'm going to ask Scott's question on the air. And he wants to know from you as an apologist and as a theologian. I think he might be slightly exaggerating your qualifications here, but no, I'm kidding. As an apologist and theologian, what gives you brain cramps? It's something that has just not been fully answered yet for you. Is there something where you're just like, ooh, that is such a
Besides the easy stuff like problem of evil, like why does God allow suffering to the extent that he does?
Right, that's hard just because it's hard.
Know the answer. Exactly. That's hard because it's hard. The one that comes to mind is the De Auxilius controversy. This is going to make really good
everybody is like the De Auxilius. I just can't get this De Auxilius controversy straight.
It's like where you try to remember which one's the aux port. Yeah.
Now I'm starting to regret Scott's question. Scott, you're a good guy, but man, if I had known where this was going. All right, tell us about the De Auxilius controversy.
Okay, so some people are going to know that there is this split within the church between Benesians and Molinists on these questions of predestination and the assistance of divine grace. And if none of that makes sense to you, don't worry, the next question will be better. I could explain all of that, but it's just going to make it worse. The basic question is this. There are some people who go to hell. How do we make sense of that? Because everyone who goes to heaven gets there with the help of divine grace. So a way to formulate it would be to ask these kind of questions. Number one, God created this person. We have to believe, because this is church teaching and it's straight out of the Bible, that God desires for all men to be saved and come to knowledge of the truth. This is what's called the universal salvific will. So you can't just take a view that you'll see in some forms of like double predestination Calvinism, where God just never wanted the unsaved to be saved. That's an easy answer to the problem. It raises a bunch of other theological problems. It's unbiblical, but at least it's very easy to wrap your mind around. The harder question is, well, God doesn't want them to. Like, God wanted everyone who he created to spend eternity with him in heaven, and a good deal of them seemingly do not. So why not? Could he have done more to save them? It seems like the answer has to be yes, because he could have given them more graces. But then it's like, well, why doesn't he give them more graces? And it spirals into this question of trying to understand this mysterious thing. Now, on one hand, we can say, well, they have free will. God offers them graces and they reject those graces. But even our cooperation with grace is aided by grace. And so it does get into some nuanced questions that are maybe just not going to be completely solved in a satisfactory way this side of eternity. But it's something that theologians have spent the better part of 500 years debating and talking about and not coming to any great conclusions, in my view.
Yeah, that's a tough one, Joe. I just go all Psalm 131 on that, you know? I have to admit that I'm one of those people that's like, well, that's too high for me. I can't.
Yeah.
Trust you, Lord. You know what I'm talking about in Psalm 31? I don't search into things that are too high for me. And sometimes I think, that one's too high for me. I can't get there. And I feel, I don't know if is that intellectual laziness or is that an acceptable degree.
There is a vice of curiositas, and thinking that we are qualified to handle everything is itself a danger that we need to watch out for.
Yeah. I don't think that's not one that I'm super tempted towards. I have all kinds of temptations, but I am qualified to answer all these questions. That doesn't come up that much. Juan in Quebec, Canada. I apologize if anybody on this show has insulted Canada in recent moments, Juan, but we're awful glad you're here. Go ahead with your question.
We love our neighbor. We're literally committed.
Our neighbor to our north, Canada.
Well, hi. Can you hear me?
Crazy good. You have the best connection I've ever heard.
Well, okay. All right. Well, thank you for taking my call, and I don't know how to ask my question, but I'm a recent convert to the Catholic Church from a Reformed Baptist and then later on Reformed Presbyterian background. I guess one of the things that drew me to Catholicism was a powerful experience of freedom from a particular sin, asking the Blessed Virgin Mary and Saint Joseph to pray for me.
Praise God.
My wife, though, she sincerely loves Jesus and wants to follow the truth, but I guess the doctrine she struggles with most is transubstantiation and the Blessed Virgin Mary, sinlessness. But she often says that, she's no longer Protestant. She doesn't consider herself as such. She's embracing more and more of Catholicism. We go to Mass together. But she said that she keeps telling me if she were to witness a Eucharistic miracle, then she would be ready to fully embrace the Catholic faith. And I guess I love her deeply, and I just want to be able to explain her, be more equipped to explain to her the faith in its fullness.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the Eucharist or about Mary? Which one would be the most fruitful?
Well, I'm not sure. I wasn't sure when I called which one. I said Mary to the person who received me. But I guess thinking back at it, the transubstantiation is really the one that she's struggling the most.
Okay, sure. So I would start with this. We are made for communion with God, and we long to have this kind of communion with him. And we want communion both at the level of body and soul. And more than that, Jesus comes to heal us, both body and soul. Sometimes we imbibe a sort of spirit where we think of this idea that we're just souls trapped in bodies, and that's not true. That's not the Christian teaching. You're a union of soul and body. And we were opposed very early on to a heresy called Gnosticism that said the spirit is good and the body is just a prison. And that's not true. It's not just a prison. The body is made by God, and it's part of who you are. And so when Jesus comes into the world, the first thing he does, the Word is made flesh and dwelt among us. So he takes on a body for himself. And then in this body, you know what he does? He eats and he drinks. And this seems so easy, so trivial that we can sometimes forget. Jesus turned bread and wine into his body and blood, probably most days of his adult life. Bread, wine, and oil were the three most common staples of the Jewish diet in the first century. Now, being from Galilee, he probably also had a lot of fish, but there's a good chance that that was fish with bread and wine and oil. And so he turns bread and wine into his body and blood through metabolism. So I want to keep that in mind just about Jesus and his miraculous body, because his body is miraculous. It's brought into the world in a miraculous way. And then Jesus goes around and he heals people. And he does both spiritual healings. For example, the paralytic, he says to him, your sins are forgiven. But then he follows that up by healing the man's body, not just his soul. And so he tells him to rise and walk, and the man does. And this is actually quite remarkable. Because if the body is bad or irrelevant, Jesus certainly spends a lot of time healing bodies. He even does things like raising the dead, whether it's Lazarus or the son of the widow of Nain, where these are people who were apart from their bodies. Their souls were separated from their bodies in the act of dying. And Jesus reunited them to their bodies, which again seems to show the body is good, because if the body isn't good, then all he's done is put them back in prison. And that would not be any great gift. So Jesus shows this real love for wanting to save us body and soul. And this culminates in his death on the cross bodily and in his rising bodily on Easter Sunday. So all of that is groundwork to say the early Christians understood the Eucharist as being key to eternal life. And they talk about it this way in the 100s. You can find this in Ignatius, in Justin Martyr, and in Irenaeus, where they talk about the Eucharist and transmutation, to use Justin's term, and the Eucharist and bodily resurrection, as Ignatius and Irenaeus talk about it. And this is this critical idea that we are made to be body and soul united with Jesus forever, and that we become united with him body and soul in the Eucharist in this special way that is in a pledge of future glory. So how does that make sense? Well, let's think about it this way. Gregory of Nyssa in the 300s says that Jesus is the physician, but he comes in to heal the wound that we have. And so the bandage has to match the wound. And we are wounded, not just at the level of body, but also the level of soul. And so if we were only wounded at the level of soul, then we could encounter Jesus just at the level of our soul, and that would be sufficient. Or if we were just souls trapped in bodies, we could just have faith and embrace Jesus through faith and just through the intellect, through the Spirit. That would be enough. But that's not true. We're soul and body. And so we are communing with him not only spiritually, but also bodily, which is why he gives us to himself not only through the gift of faith, but also through the gift of the Eucharist. And so this is the fulfillment of this deep desire of our hearts to commune with God. This is the prefigurement of the wedding feast of the Lamb. So, you're talking about your wife here, and at the risk of being indelicate, it's not enough for a spouse to say, it's great to share ideas with you, but there's a deeper sharing where you share body and soul with each other. You have this actual exchange where, yes, it's good to have the kind of meeting of minds, but if you do that in such a way that your bodies are never involved, something is missing in your marriage. And that's part of the reality of being body and soul, that we don't want to treat the body as irrelevant or look down on the body or treat it as a sinful or evil thing. The body is a gift from God. And like our souls, the body is wounded and it needs redemption. But like our souls, Jesus comes and he heals our bodies. And that's why we have the gift of the Eucharist. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. So I guess I just you did such a great job at explaining, as usual, Joe. I'm a big fan, by the way. But
oh, thank you.
And my wife is starting to. She's listened to you. One thing we saw a lot of Catholics on the internet, particularly on Discourse, that are, the chatting platform, that are very arrogant, very bad attitude, and every time she sees you or Trent or anyone at Catholic Answers, she's very refreshed. She sees that you guys, you're not trying to be arrogant. You have a good demeanor, and you care about sanctifying Christ, and that's really a witness that helps. So I praise God for you guys. I guess I just want to. I don't know how I'm going to put that into words to explain it. I'll rewatch the video and try to make sense of it.
Let me do the very short version. Jesus wants to heal us body and soul. One of the ways he heals us through the level of the soul is through faith. One of the ways that we encounter Jesus through the body is the Eucharist. And so once you understand that Jesus wants to heal us body and soul, and he uses things of the body to get there, things like baptism, things like the Eucharist, he uses these earthly kind of realities that he then turns for spiritual use. This makes sense of all of the sacraments, and in a special way, it makes sense of the Eucharist.
I'll tell you what, though, Juan, I got to leave it there and let you go because we are way past time where I was supposed to go to the break. But that was a wonderful conversation, and thank you for the very generous comments about our apologists. Comments that I must say I agree with, Juan. Thank you. Right back with more Ask Me Anything on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
EWTN has its own official YouTube channel with tens of thousands of videos covering just about every conceivable topic of interest to Catholics. And, best of all, it's free. Every day, EWTN adds new TV shows, live events, devotionals, homilies, and specials to its YouTube channel. Visit the EWTN YouTube channel today. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Loving the calls, so many good calls. Enjoying the breaks, too. Joe reminded me just moments ago that I'm going to die someday. Thank you, Joe, for that.
It made sense in context.
Well,
he was very
It didn't
still,
cheer me up, though. But
and I said, wow, I thought that the screen had frozen. You were very chill, very, very still. And you said, I'm doing more and more of that these days. And I said, well, pretty soon that'll be all you do.
Yep. But
And
it's not long now. Not long now, Joe. But I look forward to the day. I part of me looks forward to the day. I can't say that I haven't wrapped my head entirely around what's going to happen, but I guess that's for the other side. 888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. Having fun talking about death here with Joe Heschmeyer. If you've got a question about any aspect of the Catholic faith, you are welcome to call. Let's go to... I just looked at Joel's question coming up. Joel in Marietta, Ohio, listening on 105.3 FM. Joel, welcome. Go ahead with your question.
Perfect intro.
I hate to say that was an accidentally perfect intro, Joel, and I apologize for that.
No, it's all beautiful. It's been tough. We lost someone suddenly. We're all Catholic. My father-in-law just died mowing the grass. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joel.
Gosh.
But yeah, it was out of nowhere. So we're all shook. I'm trying to be there for the whole family. My wife, obviously, it was her father. His wife, my children, which were his grandchildren. He was an awesome guy. How do I explain to them what's going on after this life when he wasn't Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What was he? What was his?
He was. He prayed every night. He had a close relationship with God. He had a tough life. He lost 2 sons before he went, and he just had his own relationship. I tried to witness to him, but to no avail. So call it what you will.
I think
that's what he was. He was a God-loving man.
We entrust him to the mercy of God. This is someone who apparently spent every night praying to God and wanting to have a relationship with him. And it's always tricky because you want to, on the one hand, refrain from anything like a relativism where you act like it doesn't matter. And on the other hand, recognize that salvation isn't just a theology quiz and that God is merciful in these often unexpected ways. And so the desire to please God pleases God, even if the way you execute how you're trying to please God maybe falls short. Because for all of us, the things we try to do for God are often, in hindsight, maybe not the things we should have done in this situation. It can be as simple as you have a conversation and you feel like, okay, I want to do my best for God. And then you go and make a fool of yourself. And you're like, well, obviously that's not how I would have liked it to turn out. But you can know that God can still be pleased with your effort, your attempt. So here's somebody who cared about trying to please God, who prayed to him continuously. and we know God is merciful. And sometimes that's all we can say is God is merciful, and he wants the salvation of your father-in-law. That's a theological fact that is undeniable. And he rewards those who seek him. And so we can pray for his salvation, and we can entrust him to the mercy of God. And we should also pray for him because we believe that no one stands before God until they're completely purified. So if somebody dies in imperfect friendship with God, they need to be purified before they stand in his presence. And this is the state that we call purgatory, just a process of cleaning you up, of being purified from your sins. And we should be doing that in this life. But if it doesn't happen in this life, it has to happen before we stand before God. So we pray for those who've died. This is an ancient Jewish practice before it was a Christian one, but it's a good practice for all of us to be in. So we should pray for your father-in-law, and I hope those listening will do that now. And we should also not despair of him seeing God, not despair of his salvation, because we know God is merciful.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of praying, and so a follow-up question is, I've asked my wife if she's prayed, and I'm willing to pray with her, but she hasn't. So she's obviously upset and angry. What do I, how do I approach that?
You can pray on her behalf for now. It's good for her to pray, but there are times where trying to push a person to do the thing that you think they ought to do just pushes them away. And so, there's a grieving process that happens there. And there's times when people are angry with God. I'm a big believer that you should pray angry. And sometimes people, when they have what they feel like they aren't holy feelings, will keep those away from God. But then you read the Psalms and people just vent at God. And it's like, all right, actually, that's really good. It's really good to see that. God inspired the authors of Scripture to let us see the human authors at their worst. And, one of my favorites is Jonah in Jonah 4, when he's so mad at God that he wants to be dead. And the only thing he's mad at God about is saving the Ninevites, because Jonah hates the people he was preaching to so much. Jonah's just being a complete drama queen. And God then grows up a gourd that gives him shade in the middle of the day. And then the gourd dies. And then Jonah's just furious with God again. And the whole thing. And that's really the last you see of Jonah in the book, is him just having a completely insane reaction to both the salvation of these Gentiles and then the death of a plant. And God just trying to show him how ridiculous he's being. So it's okay if you're having feelings that you don't love to just take those to God, or you're even having thoughts that you don't love, and take them to God, and he can handle that. He can sort those out.
Joel, what I'd like to do is send you a book that we have called Secrets from Heaven. It's on the parables and sayings of Jesus, his own parables and sayings from the Gospels. It's a beautiful and comforting book. For you and for your wife. We certainly will pray for your father-in-law. And I hope that Joe's answers were helpful and comforting, but please call back whenever you'd like. Just hang on, though. Give us an address, and we'll send you Secrets from Heaven, the beautiful book from our friend, Father Sebastian Walsh. None of you guys could stop me from talking about death right before we got nobody thought, nobody saw that coming? Joel was very patient with you, though.
That's the nature of death. Often you don't.
Yeah, you don't see it coming. But what a gracious person he was, though.
Yes.
I
was amazed you didn't just
skip over that and go do another call in between. Oh no, I'll take my medicine, Joe. Dustin's in Dover, New Hampshire, watching on YouTube. We're glad you're here, Dustin. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, Cy and Joe.
Hi, Dustin.
Thank you for taking my question and for all the work you guys do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So just to preface this question, Joe, I did watch your video, When Should I Become Catholic, the other day, and I found it extremely encouraging. It calmed the part of me that wants to make sense of all these matters, before I make a move. So let me just say that. And then the other part of this question is about my own journey, but also about sharing with my evangelical friends, which is my background, why Catholicism is so attractive to me. So here's the question. If I've become convinced that certain Catholic teachings, like sacramental confession and the Church's stance on sexual morality, are true, is it naive, irresponsible, or downright maybe dangerous to move towards joining the Church with more weight given to these convictions before fully answering questions about Church authority?
I'll tell you what you're going to have to do.
That's a great question. Let's get it right after this break.
Yeah, hang on. The music started playing, and we got to take this break. Dustin, we'll be right back. Joe Heschmeyer, our guest, Ask Me Anything on Catholic Answers Live. What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
What is the Catholic Church? Everyone seems to have an opinion, but the Church never quite fits into the boxes people make for it. In The Faith Unboxed, author Andrew Petiprin looks at some of the most common boxes people put the Catholic Church in and explains why they don't fit. In doing so, he brings us closer to what the Church really is, the institution founded by Christ. Order The Faith Unboxed today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
You've heard the same tired anti-Catholic arguments again and again, and you know they don't hold up. But explaining why isn't always easy. In The Protestant Fallacies, Parker Manning unpacks the most common objections to Catholicism, exposes their flaws, and makes the Catholic response clear, practical, and even fun. Understand your faith and talk about it with confidence. Get your copy of The Protestant Fallacies today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
From the dawn of creation, angels have stood in the presence of God as messengers, warriors, and guardians. Some seek our fall, some intercede for our salvation, and one is assigned to protect you. In the new book, Angelic Answers, Father Mike Driscoll uncovers the truth about angels and their unseen battles. So mysterious to us, and yet so close. Get Angelic Answers today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Dustin's on the line from Dover, New Hampshire. He got his question out, but we couldn't get an answer out because we went to the break. But Dustin, still with us, and Joe.
I'm still here.
Okay, good. Joe, go ahead.
So I want to make sure that I got your question correct. You are moving in a more Catholic direction on things like, I believe you said sacramental confession, and what was the other?
Teachings of around sexual morality.
Oh,
like
teachings of sexual morality. Right.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense to follow your convictions there. Now, I think this should help influence how you think about those broader issues of the authority of the church. And I'll explain why. But I think God works in unique ways with all sorts of people. A friend of mine was an agnostic, and he became convinced that the church had contraception right, and that led him into the Catholic Church. And I've never met another person who had that unique of a journey. But it's like God will use whatever inroad that he can. I mean, I've had people, from Protestantism, where they already have some basic kind of shared sexual ethic, where they realize that they've ceded ground they shouldn't have ceded on contraception, and that the Catholic Church has, miraculously stood its ground. But in this particular case, it was just unusual coming from agnosticism. I mentioned that just to say, if God is inviting you through a window or through a door, go through that window or door. It doesn't matter if it's an unusual one, and see where it leads. And so if he's telling you that you need to, in this case, maybe live your life radically differently in terms of sexual ethics, in terms of going to confession, those are prompts in the direction of the Catholic Church. Now, the reason I say that should influence how we think about church authority is frequently I'll talk to Protestants who think that the Catholic Church has gotten tons of things right. Things like the Trinity and the natures of Christ. Things that are easier to get wrong than they are to get right. Things where, left to their own devices, very few people get them right. And yet we've gotten these things right over and over and over again, even in the judgment of many Protestants. And it's worth asking at a certain point, like, well, how likely is it that we're just getting lucky? How likely is it that this is just a result of mere human skill? Because human skill can get you somewhere. You know, you ask trained theologians and brilliant thinkers theological questions, they're going to get a lot of them right. It's true. But they're not going to get all of them right. And so the idea that we got the Trinity right and the Christology right and all of that, and maybe you're realizing now we got sexual morality right when everybody else was getting it wrong. We got sacramental confession right. Once those things start to pile up, at a certain point, the thesis, the Catholic Church is really lucky or really smart, has to give way to the Holy Spirit is guiding the Catholic Church. That is just the best explanation for the objective evidence that the Church has gotten all these issues right. And so that should be the kind of where this journey leads you. But it's okay if it hasn't gotten you there so far.
What do you think, Dustin?
No, yeah, it's you know, I went to a Curious About Catholicism evening at the parish in my neighborhood last night. Like, nice. I'm definitely making steps in that direction, but a part of me is like, you know, I think how I'm thinking about it is if some of my evangelical friends asked me, so what makes you curious? And I said, well, the church's stance on contraception, or, you know, the church's understanding of confession as being sacramental, that would be like, they would be like, what? That is such a silly reason. And so then I'm, you know, going, oh my gosh, is that a silly reason? Maybe I need to, you know, investigate something more deeply. So that's kind of the headspace.
I really don't think it's a silly reason at all. I think it makes complete sense. I mean, you know, on contraception, on sexual morality issues more broadly, these have deranged our entire culture. And a lot of these are issues, you know, you can't understand abortion and the plague of abortion without understanding the sexual revolution beginning with contraception. And a lot of Protestant denominations went along for the ride for the first part of that journey while the Catholic Church was standing up and saying, like, no, this isn't okay. And so to see that the church was right where these different Protestant denominations were almost universally wrong is a sound reason to say, well, what other issues might that be true of?
Okay, Dustin?
Yeah, that's good, Joe. Thank you.
Well, Joe, is there a book of yours that you'd like us to send to Dustin? Is there?
Yeah, why don't you have your pick of the catalog? Maybe the early church was the Catholic Church?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Dustin, if you hang on and give us an address, we'll send you the early church was the Catholic Church. And if that one doesn't appeal to you, Edgar will run through the other Joe Heschmeyer titles till we get to the one that you like. Thanks very much, Dustin. On we go to Rob in Alberta, Canada, watching on YouTube. Rob, welcome. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Oh, we're happy to have you, Rob.
I just had a question relating to the early church fathers and their view on the end times. So I've been kind of doing a bit of studying on my own. I got kind of frustrated with like evangelical doomsaying, and so I started to look into the early church fathers, and I kind of came into a bit of conflict when reading people like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus and Tertullian. And primarily on their view of like the end times. So a lot of them will say that there will be like 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's like literal, this kind of like historical premillennial view, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Where
yeah, Chiliaism is what they call it in the old days, but premillennialism is what they call it these days.
Yeah. And so I know it's nothing like the evangelical or like rapture kind of theology, but the Catechism of the Catholic Church is very explicit that these teachings are to be rejected. But we got authors like Irenaeus claiming that they're getting this teaching from like the Apostle John and stuff. So I'm just curious, like how to reconcile what feels like a contradiction between what our church teaches today and what appears to be like a handing on of the apostolic faith.
Yeah, there is not an apostolic teaching that explicitly addresses this issue. Even when Irenaeus is talking about that, when you read him in context, he is interpreting what John said. Like what John really did say what Irenaeus says. And Irenaeus is taking that in this very literal kind of premillennial view. And we can say John did say that, and Irenaeus may not be correctly understanding the implications of that. In the same way that Irenaeus, I believe also in that section, quotes from Isaiah. And maybe I'm confusing Irenaeus and Justin there, but one of them quotes from Isaiah at a certain point with this. And we'd say, yeah, like the quotation from Isaiah is real. The understanding of it may not be correct. The important thing, we actually have the best evidence from this comes from Justin Martyr and his dialogue with Trypho. Because you can see early fathers like Clement of Alexandria who don't take this literal view, who think that the millennial reign is a spiritual thing and is not a literal 1,000 years. And Trypho questions Justin Martyr about this in the mid-100s. This is about 150. He asks him, but tell me, do you really admit that this place, Jerusalem, shall be rebuilt? And do you expect your people to be gathered together and made joyful with Christ and the patriarchs and the prophets, both the men of our nation and other proselytes who joined them before your Christ came? And Justin responds by saying, I admitted to you formerly that I and many others are of this opinion and believe that such will take place, as you assuredly are aware. But on the other hand, I signified to you that many who belong to the pure and pious faith and are true Christians think otherwise. So this was explicitly in the 100s, an interpretive question upon which pious Christians took different views, and not something there was a single apostolic teaching on.
Okay. So I guess maybe a follow-up question would be us as me specifically reading back on these church fathers that have like kind of like a mixed view on it, and then listening to what the church says about the teaching on premillennialism. Is there a way to square the church fathers with an amillennial view, or is it one of these things where it's like, because I know Irenaeus made predictions that like the world would end in the year 500, and so it's like, is it just something that we can say that this is not an issue of salvation and more an issue of interpretation, and it's okay to just kind of leave it?
Yeah, one of the things I point out in the early church was the Catholic Church is that when we treat the church fathers faithfully, one of the things that it requires doing is distinguishing when they're being theologians from when they're being eyewitnesses to the tradition. And sometimes they're being both, but frequently we can say, okay, they're either trying to make sense of the biblical evidence or trying to make sense of the apostolic teaching, or they're just passing along what they've received. And neither of those are bad. But when they're doing theology, it's possible they're just going to get a theological interpretation wrong. But when they're passing on and saying, like, this is what we've all believed, when they're just witnessing to the universal belief of their day, that's, I think, a much easier thing where we can just say, okay, this is like that. We just trust that. Like if they said everyone in the 100s believed that there was going to be a literal 1,000-year millennium reign of Christ, and it's going to be in Jerusalem, and this is all very literal, that would be a real problem. But the fact that they say the opposite and say we don't all agree on how to interpret this puts it squarely in that realm of theological interpretation. So it's okay to say the church fathers themselves will sometimes do theology in such a way where they disagree with one another, and we don't have to pretend otherwise. We don't have to pretend that they're all infallible, that all of their interpretations of every passage of Scripture are right. And we can still trust that the Holy Spirit is guiding and leading the church amidst that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That helps a lot.
Rob, thank you. That was perfect timing, Joe. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but that's perfect timing for the break.
Never timed anything perfectly on the show. I usually take questions right at the wrong time.
Yeah, we have a similar problem in that regard. But Rob, thank you for the call. We'll take a quick break back.
Rob, if you want to stick around, if you haven't hung up yet, you can get a copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church.
Okay, hang on, Rob. Give us an address. We'll send it off. Right back with more Joe Heschmeyer on Catholic Answers Live.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Coverage as seen through a Catholic lens.
All people of faith and sincerity need to awaken to this and protect this fundamental right of religious liberty.
Expert analysis.
Does revelation judge history, or does history judge revelation?
Stories vital to people of faith.
It's part of our faith that comedy and tragedy naturally go hand in hand.
Delivered to your inbox every week. Sign up today. Go to EWTN.com/worldover.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I think Joe has done surprisingly well today. And I don't say that because I have a low estimation of Joe, but because I have a high estimate of how much damage jet lag does to you. So he's fought the jet lag to a draw. At worst, he fought it to a draw. And it's Ask Me Anything. Let's get to our next caller. Ashton is in Forest Grove, Oregon, listening on 88.3 FM. Glad to have you here with us, Ashton. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you for having me. I just, so a little backstory. I grew up not believing in organized religion, and this last Easter, I just got baptized, confirmed, and in full communion in the Catholic Church.
Praise God, brother.
Bless you.
Welcome home.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, out of the Portland diocese, the Holy Spirit is definitely on the move. We had over 1,600 people brought into the Catholic Church this last Easter.
Wow. Yeah.
And,
in Portland?
Yeah, something's happening up there, huh? Well, you got a great archbishop, and you got a lot of wonderful priests
that's
up
true.
there.
Man, that's quite the sample.
It's been it's been definitely miraculous, and a lot of really awesome experiences have happened since I've been baptized. So my question is, so my wife was raised up cradle Catholic, and we got married in a Catholic church, and then now I'm just finally getting baptized. But we have two kids. We have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And my wife's pregnancies were very risky to her. So this is before I was, like I said, just got baptized this last Easter. So after her second one, it was kind of like out of my decision, but she had to get a full, it's not tubes tied, but they had to remove the tubes.
Okay.
Out of fear that if she got pregnant again, she would die. And so she did that, and then now I'm learning more about the faith and everything. So my brass tacks question is, if I have relations with my wife, knowing full well that she can't get pregnant and conceive, is that considered a sin?
No, it's not. This often comes up on the other side, where men who've had a vasectomy convert, and they are not morally required to have the vasectomy reversed because that can be painful and dangerous and everything else, and are still able to engage in marital relations. And the reason is that the fact that someone can't, in fact, procreate doesn't mean that you're being closed off to life. Like, you are not at this point in time taking an action to try to stop pregnancy from happening. Whatever happened in the past is no longer relevant. You know, like if you're in a situation where you're saying, I'm only going to have marital relations with my wife if she ensures that she's physically incapable of becoming pregnant, then yeah, that would be a problem. But if your wife already is simply physically incapable of becoming pregnant, you can still have marital relations with her. Case in point, people who are postmenopausal, or women who are postmenopausal, you know, that the fact that you are not able to get pregnant anymore biologically is not being closed off to life. It's simply a reality of life. And so a couple can be completely open to life and deal with infertility. A couple can be completely open to life and, you know, their past childbearing age, etc. And those are not moral problems. Those may be personal crosses. They may be difficult situations, but that's different in kind from someone using contraception or some other means of trying to stop the body from doing what it's meant to do. Does that help, Ashton?
Oh, that does. That helps tremendously, because I thought it was in kind of a form of contraception, you know, but it is life-saving for her. So that's why my whole dilemma has been kind of, you know, a little bit tough to understand. But no, that's amazing.
But
yeah, I mean, like the past action, like the important thing is the separating the past action from your present intention.
Okay.
That makes sense, Ashton?
Okay, yeah, no, that makes tons of sense. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'd like to, I mean, just to thank you for a great call, and also just it's exciting that you have come into the church, and I'll give you a copy of Father Sebastian Walsh's book, Secrets from Heaven. It's a book I love to give away, and if you'd like it, I think you will enjoy reading it, Ashton. Hang on. We'll send it to you. I'm going to try to move a little bit quickly to see if I can get as many on as I can before we have to go. Shamar is in Houston, Texas, listening on Twitter. Shamar, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Joe.
Thank you for having me.
We're happy to.
Yes.
Yeah, just got done with OCIA. I'm about to receive my sacraments this Saturday. I just have to pick a sponsor. But I had one question in regards
We're kind of putting that off, aren't you? You waited, you decided to wait. Wait, you got to pick a sponsor. You're coming into the church in 3 days?
I think that was my wedding.
It's kind of a tough situation.
Okay.
There's nobody in my specific circle who
I see. Yeah. Well, God bless you. Well, I'm so it's very exciting, and welcome home. That's beautiful coming into the church.
Let me give a little piece of practical advice here that was completely unsolicited, but might be relevant for you or anybody else. You can have a sponsor stand in by proxy. So let's say there's nobody in your immediate area that you respect and would like as a sponsor or anything, but maybe there's somebody who who's other side of the country. You can ask them if they can be your sponsor by proxy. So someone will physically be in the church and answer the questions on behalf of them, and they commit to spiritually praying for you and doing all of the normal roles that a sponsor would. So they're still your sponsor. They just aren't physically there in person. So I don't know if that helps, but it might open up a few avenues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't know that was a thing.
All right, so I'm guessing you got one last question before you come into the church in full community. Like, Joe, here's my last question, but
no, it's not in regards. It's already a done deal.
Praise God.
But there is one thing that's kind of one thing that's always kind of shook in my head, and funny enough, it was kind of what brought it well, I wouldn't say accidentally, but inadvertently brought me to the faith. Of course, next to the realization of the sacrament of the Eucharist. That was another thing. But it regards Mary, growing up, I was former Southern Baptist before I decided to, before I became more aware of, church tradition and stuff of that nature. And it was specifically, I believe, growing up in Southern Texas, like there's predominantly Hispanic demographic, and you see images of Lady of Guadalupe everywhere. And growing Southern Baptist, it's like those Catholics, they worship Mary, So I just go, okay, yeah, sure, I guess they do, And it was specifically, I think, a video I watched by, it was this YouTuber, his name is Gabby After Hours or After Dark, something like that. And he made a full-on documentary in regards to Our Lady of Guadalupe and, watching it in detail and, like, all of the things about it. And I'm like, this is very interesting. And I decided to look more so into, like Marian apparitions and stuff like that. And it really kind of surprises me that she kind of, like, pops up everywhere, Our Lady of Fatima, Zaytun, stuff of that nature, and maybe I'm just trying to shake off like that old, the Protestant, them drawing that in my head, like she's just simply the mother of Jesus, nothing more, just a simple character, because that's basically what the view is, and I'm trying to I'm basically trying to give her the respect that she, that she deserves, like in her position as the mother of God, And I believe my question is regards to, she does seem to pop up more often than typically people would claim that, because some people claim like, oh, I've seen our Lord, I've seen a vision of him. He's popped up, People who claim to have seen Jesus. I like it, for example.
Why does Mary appear so much?
Why does she appear so much more than it appears, Jesus does? Because, like I said, I want to, give her that. I'm kind of stuck, because I want to give her the respect, respect and acknowledge her position. But at the same time, I also have this weird fear of taking away from Christ and giving it to her. It's something like that. Because some people, like more Marian people, they like, our blessed mother, and I'm like, and I still have that thing like, why can't you just pray to God for that? Why does that have to be through Mary? I still kind of have that in my head, and I'm just trying to like wrap it around, like, what exactly, besides being a guy.
Yeah, let me take a crack at that and see if it helps.
Yeah, if you could understand what I was asking through that rambling, basically.
I do. I think I've got it. And if I don't, you can set me straight. One of the reasons Mary's such a big deal is because the spiritual battle from the beginning to the end of the Bible is between the devil and the woman. Now, you see this first in Genesis 3, in verse 15, when God puts a curse on the serpent. He says, I'll put enmity, like strife, between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And so often there's this debate about what do we mean by, because the Hebrew there actually says, it shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise its heel. So what's meant by that? But I want to actually leave that aside and say, isn't it weird that, number one, the enmity is between the devil and the woman rather than the man, and number two, that the seed is measured through the woman rather than the man. And these are all connected because seed, zera in Hebrew, was normally measured through the man. The man provided the seed, and the woman was kind of the fertile soil. There's only one other time in the entire New Testament where the seed is measured through the man, and that's when it's talking about Abraham's children with Hagar compared to his children, like his descendants with Sarah. So they're called the seed of Sarah and the seed of Hagar, because you can't say the seed of Abraham because he's the father on both sides of the family tree. So with that one exception, the seed is always measured through the man. So why here is it measured through the woman? Well, the answer should be clear, because the seed of the woman foretold is not Eve's son, Cain. It's Mary's son, Jesus. That he is the one, and because he has no human father, the seed is measured through the woman, which means that the woman here, the virgin mother of Jesus, is Mary, that the conflict is between the devil and Mary. And in Revelation 12, we see the devil, Revelation 12:17, the devil is angry with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and bear testimony to Jesus. That you are the son of Mary, and the devil hates Mary. So she appears, she brings 10 million people in Latin America to Christ, and she's an important player from the beginning to the end of the Bible. Obviously, Much more could be said. We'll have to do that another time.
Shamar, thanks for the call. That music means we got to go, but if you hang on the line, we'll send you a copy of Joe's book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, just for the price of an address to send it to you. Joe Heschmeyer, our guest, off to bed with you. Thanks for doing this, Joe, but I know you're tired. Good night.
Sounds good.
All right. Indeed. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here at Catholic Answers Live.